The morning of the 26th of December, 2004. It is just before 8 o'clock along the coast of northern Sumatra. It is the day after Christmas, and the Indian Ocean is calm and bright. The sky is clear. The water is warm and blue, the way it always is. In Banda Aceh, the markets are opening and the fishing boats are already out. On the island of Simeulue, close to the open sea, children play in the early light. Along the Aceh coast, families move through an ordinary Sunday morning. Far to the north, on the beaches of Thailand, tourists lay out their towels near Khao Lak and Phuket. Children build sandcastles at the water's edge. It is the first morning of a long-awaited holiday. Across the water, in Sri Lanka, a crowded train pulls out of Colombo, bound for the coast. In the towns of southern India, fishermen mend their nets, and women carry water along the shore. The weather is perfect. The sea is gentle. Nothing moves that should not move. It is an ordinary holiday morning, shared by millions of people around one vast blue ocean. Nothing feels wrong. Nothing looks wrong. And that is the cruelest part of this whole story. Because deep beneath the sea, far off the coast of Sumatra, something has already begun. The force is already awake. It is already on its way. It has already decided everything, and no one around this ocean knows it yet. In this last quiet hour, on a dozen distant coasts, millions of people are living the final moments of an ordinary life. They are opening their shops. They are walking to the beach. And for so many of them, this morning will not end the way they believe. If stories like this stay with you, follow this channel and leave a like, so the next reconstruction can find its way back to you. And now, let us go down to the sea. Off the coast of Sumatra, two great plates of the earth have been pressing against each other for centuries. One is sliding beneath the other, a fraction more each year. The rock bends, the strain builds, and it holds, and holds, and holds. This morning, far below, the rock finally gives way. And it does not give way at a single point. It tears. The seafloor splits along a crack more than 1,000 kilometers long. It is a wound in the planet as long as the coastline of California, opening in a matter of minutes. One side of it lurches upward and lifts the entire ocean with it. The energy released here is almost beyond thought. It is more than every power plant on Earth could make in years, spent in a few breaths. The shock is so vast it nudges the whole planet and makes the day itself a fraction shorter. Before we follow that wave, I owe you 3 answers. Why this disaster struck so many, so hard? Why millions of people were never warned in time? And what human choice turned a natural event into the deadliest disaster in modern history? Hold on to that last question, because the truth of this morning is simple, and it is heavy. It was not only the sea that killed these coasts. It was a choice made long before, and a knowledge that had been let go. This ocean had done this before, long ago, on the island of Simeulue, closest of all to the deep. The sea had risen and swallowed the shore. Most of the island's people had died in a single day. But the ones who lived did something rare. They turned their grief into a song. They taught their children one simple rule, in lullabies and old poems, passed down for 100 years. When the earth shakes hard and the sea pulls back, do not wait. Run for the hills. Run. They even had a word for it, older than any siren. Smong, the sea coming onto the land. And this was the detail the rest of the ocean had let itself forget. Everywhere else, the memory was gone. There was no song, and no rule, and no siren. There was no warning system anywhere on this ocean at all, because a wave like this was thought to be someone else's problem, a danger of a different sea. Scientists had warned, only months before, that these coasts stood unprotected, and nothing had been built, nothing at all. Let us come back to that bright morning one more time. New faces now. People to whom no warning would ever come. A fisherman pushes his boat out from a beach in southern India, reading the flat, calm sea. A shopkeeper in a Sri Lankan town raises his shutter for the holiday crowd. On a Thai beach, a family lays out breakfast in the sun. A grandmother sweeps the step of a house near the water. Two boys ride their bicycles along the shore road. On the crowded train from Colombo, passengers watch the sea slide past their windows. It is a warm, bright, ordinary morning, with nothing unusual in it. The kind of morning no one remembers, because nothing is supposed to happen in it. No one is watching the water. No one is checking a way to higher ground. No one is thinking about danger. There is no siren on any of these coasts. There is no voice on any radio waiting to warn them. There is nothing between these millions of people and the sea but a thin, bright morning calm. And the clock is already running. Very soon, on coast after coast, everything will change. That is why no one is ready. That is exactly why no one is ready. It begins just before 8 o'clock, off the coast of Sumatra. First, the ground begins to shake. Not for a moment, and not for a minute. It goes on and on, longer than anyone has ever felt the earth move. In Banda Aceh, walls crack and buildings sway. People fall to their knees, unable to stand. The shaking lasts for many minutes, longer than almost any earthquake ever recorded. This is one of the greatest earthquakes in the history of our planet. On the scale scientists use, it reaches close to 9, near the very top of what the Earth can do. In the last 100 years, only 2 or 3 have ever been larger. And out at sea, the ocean has already been lifted. The floor of the sea has risen and dropped along that vast tear in the crust. The planet has changed shape, and now the worst is coming, and it is already moving. The wave that is now crossing the ocean cannot be seen from a ship. In deep water, it is low and long, a swell that lifts a boat by a hand's width and sets it down again. But it is fast. Across the open sea, this wave travels as fast as a jet airliner. It will cross hundreds of kilometers of ocean in the time it takes to watch a film. And here is the cruelest part. On the nearest coasts, there are only minutes. On the far coasts, there are hours. And on none of them is there a single warning on its way. The people of Sumatra feel the shaking stop. Some step outside to see what has happened. Others begin to help their neighbors from the rubble. Out at sea, the water is already coming. Toward Aceh, it is minutes away. Toward Sri Lanka and India and Thailand, it is an hour and more. And no one is calling. No one is calling at all. And here is the heart of it. There was a place on the far side of the world that saw the earthquake happen, but it watched a different ocean, and it had no one here to call. Its first guess at the size of the quake was far too small. By the time the true scale was understood, the waves were already ashore. And even then, there was no system, no siren, no phone line reaching these beaches. The warning had nowhere to land, so the only warning came from the sea itself. On coast after coast, the water did something strange. It drew back. It pulled away from the land, far past the lowest tide, and laid the wet seabed bare. Fish flapped in the shallow pools. Boats tilted onto their sides in the sand. And people walked out onto the empty seabed to look, curious, delighted, lifting their cameras. For the first time in history, a great wave was being filmed as it came. Tourists stood on balconies, recording the strange retreating sea. They did not know the oldest rule of the ocean. The water always comes back. But one child knew. On a beach in Phuket, a 10-year-old girl named Tilly Smith stood watching the sea pull away and froth like the head of a poured drink. Only 2 weeks before, in a classroom in England, her teacher had shown her exactly this. The sea drawing back, the bubbling foam, the wave that comes in and will not go out. She turned to her mother and said they had to leave the beach now. Her parents believed her. They warned the others, and the hotel staff cleared the sand. Minutes later, the wave came in. And on that one crowded beach, because a child remembered a lesson, no one was killed. For almost everyone else, on 1,000 other beaches, there was no such warning, and no time. Now forget the tall blue wall of water from the films. This is not that. This is something worse. It is not a wave that breaks and falls back. It is the sea itself, rising and coming on and not stopping. It is black and brown, heavy with sand and wreckage. It does not curl. It floods. In Banda Aceh, it rises higher than the houses, higher than the trees. In places, it reaches the height of a 10-story building and pushes for kilometers inland. There is a roar you feel in your chest. There is the grind of everything solid being torn apart. There is water where a city stood, and then there is no city. Whole districts of Banda Aceh are gone. Villages along the Aceh coast are wiped from the map, scoured down to bare foundations and mud. On the shores of Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand, the sea walks into the streets and does not leave. And this time, the world sees it, not from news cameras, but from the shaking hands of ordinary people. Tourists on their balconies, filming the water climb the stairs. It is one of the first catastrophes the whole world watches happen, frame by frame. There is one image that holds the whole tragedy. Off the coast of Sri Lanka, a crowded train runs along the shore, packed for the holiday. When the first wave washes over the tracks, the train stops. And hundreds of people from the nearby village run to it. They climb onto its roof and crowd behind its steel cars, certain that something so heavy must be safe. Then, the second wave comes, far higher than the first. It lifts the train from the rails and throws it into the trees. As many as 1,700 people are lost in a single moment. It becomes the deadliest train disaster the world has ever known. They were not foolish. They ran to the one solid thing they could see. And no voice, on any line, ever reached them to say that it was not enough. And now the hardest truth of this morning. On the coasts near Sumatra, there was almost no time. But on the far coasts, there was time. There was an hour. There were 2 hours. On the coast of Africa, there were 7. 7 hours is longer than a working day. It is more than enough to walk every beach and empty it. And in all those hours, on all those coasts, not one warning arrived. The knowledge was there. The wave was tracked. Scientists watched it cross the ocean and could do nothing because there was no system to carry their voice. Thousands died in the afternoon. On coasts the wave reached hours later, long after everyone there could have been told. The cost is almost too large to hold in the mind. Across 14 countries, more than 227,000 people were killed. That is a great city, emptied in a single day. Whole families vanished together. More than 1.5 million people lost their homes. Towns and villages that had names, and schools and harbors, simply stopped existing. The wave crossed the entire ocean. A day of driving would not cover the distance it traveled. It killed people who lived thousands of kilometers apart, who never felt the earth move at all. And the warning had always been there. It was only buried, twice over. It was buried in memory. On one small island, the old song had survived. Its people ran for the hills, and out of many thousands, only a handful were lost. Where that memory was gone, and on every coast that never had it, the sea took whoever it found, and it was buried in choice. The scientists had said this ocean needed a warning system, The nations had heard and had done nothing because the danger belonged, they thought, to a different sea. The knowledge existed, the evidence existed, the people who understood it existed, and all of it had been allowed to fall silent until the ocean itself had to teach the lesson again. When it was finally over, the world changed. In the years that followed, the nations built the warning system the ocean had never had. Today, there are sensors on the seafloor and buoys on the surface, watching this water, ready to send the call that once had nowhere to go. And in classrooms on many coasts, children now learn the same lesson a 10-year-old once carried onto a beach. When the earth shakes hard and the sea draws back, do not wait and do not go to look. Go up and go now. But the people who paid for that lesson will never see it. They will never know that their ocean is watched now, where once there was only silence. They will never see the warnings that came too late for them, and just in time for those who follow. They woke on an ordinary holiday morning, on coasts they had always trusted, beside a sea that had always given and never taken. And in the bright, clear light, without a single warning, the water came. If you want their story to be remembered, tell me which story I should reconstruct next. Write it in the comments, and I will take you there. Smong, the song that saved an island and the silence that drowned a coast. 7 hours of warning that never came. The 2004 Indian Ocean, Tsunami Boxing Day, 2004. When the sea drew back and only one child ran.